Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We are so excited to have you guys all here, and we already have some people who are viewing us on YouTube and on Facebook.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, it's very nice to see you guys. I think we're waiting for one of the speakers, Amin, to join. I think he lost the link, so just a couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, I think while Amin is joining us, we can already start because I guess he wasn't like the first one to present. And we would like first to give floor to Ms. Ildora Khajaeva, the Senior Manager of the Department of Cooperation with International Educational Institutions and Research, to greet our speakers and to open our event on behalf of Management Development Institute of Singapore in Tashkent. Ms. Ildora, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Dear guests, distinguished speakers, on behalf of Management Development Institute of Singapore in Tashkent, I would like to greet you in today's webinar dedicated to our tourism literacy. This topic became a hot one in the recent years, and the current situation in the world made it even more prominent. The COVID-19 pandemic and strict anti-epidemic measures introduced by countries all over the globe have accelerated the transformation of world tourism. The industry is losing hundreds of billions of dollars and millions of jobs. But at the same time, the digital travel tech startups are entering the market. New opportunities for individual tours and forms of international cooperation appear. The current crisis has exposed long-standing structural weaknesses in the tourism economy. It is a fragmented sector dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises, overly seasonally dependent, as well as gaps in the readiness of governments and businesses to respond quickly to new challenges and changes. The international experts have determined the 5 priority areas for transforming tourism in the post-pandemic world. First is mitigation of socio-economic consequences as preserving jobs, building confidence and security. Second, increasing competitiveness and sustainability as developing tourism infrastructure and improving the quality of services provided, diversifying products and markets, promoting domestic tourism. Third, digitalization. The digitalization of tourism ecosystem, creation of innovative solutions, investments, and digital skills. Fourth, promoting sustainable development, implementing carbon neutral solutions, developing ecotourism. And I would say last but not least, coordination and partnership to transform the sector and achieve sustainable development goals. The experts from the whole world as well as the experts from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development are confident that the current crisis is an opportunity to create a more sustainable tourism economy. The sustainability, however, is not possible without awareness both from the part of tourists and those who are working in this sphere. We are sure that today's online webinar has potential to become a platform where experts can exchange their opinions and provide new insights and solutions that can be helpful for the industry of tourism. The expertise from the international professionals cannot be undervalued, and we appreciate our speakers that they have managed to gather here and share their views, ideas, and thoughts on tourism literacy and prospects. Let me once more thank you, our distinguished experts, and express my confidence that this event will be useful for all the participants and will help to reconsider our views on the tourism industry and tourism literacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dindora. Thank you for encouraging our speakers. Indeed, we consider that this topic will be fantastic, and having such a great greeting, I guess it's quite inspiring for all of us. So thank you very much indeed. Just before we begin, I would like to set some ground rules for those who are participating remotely and those who are watching us online. I will be monitoring the chats both on YouTube and Facebook. So if you guys have some questions to our speakers, if you would like to comment something, just write in the chats and I will be the one who will passing your comments to you. We still did not introduce ourselves, sorry, because we are too excited that finally we did it. So my name is Dr. Deniza Alieva. I am from East Tashkent. I am a leading lecturer of School of Business and Management and leading specialist in research department. And my co-moderator is Ms. Gulnaz Osmanova, the head of School of Tourism, and I'm passing the word to her. Please, Ms. Gulnaz.
Well, once again, good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear speakers, and those who are watching us remotely on YouTube and Facebook. Today, we've gathered to discuss a very interesting, I'm personally very thrilled to share and exchange some ideas on the topic of recovering tourism through empowerment of tourism literacy. As we know that the tourism industry's future continues to be somewhat unpredictable today. Since international tourism has declined by about 80%, but however, domestic tourism is beginning to mitigate the effect, and the policymakers have taken an impressive rapid steps to rebuild and reactivate the industry while safeguarding some jobs and businesses. Numerous countries are still working on proposals, including Uzbekistan, to strengthen their tourism economies aftermath of COVID-19. Developing strategies to promote tourism's sustainable recovery, fostering the digital transition and the transition to a more environmentally friendly tourism infrastructure is so-called rethinking the tourism for the future is very important. And we've gathered today under this wonderful topic, and most of our speakers have a very rich tourism industry background as an experienced traveler, as those who have given many seminars and speeches in the conferences on this topic as well, and would be happy to share their insight on this. So we've named today's event as Empowering Tourism Literacy because we believe that tourism literacy should be used as a lens by which to raise the awareness of new destinations, to value the preservation of culture and history, to share more information about sustainable travel, and to lead the tourism industry more responsibly through empowering tourism, through community empowerment, supporting and taking action in support of local needs, visitor excitement, and understanding desires of the residents as well. And today, let me introduce the participants of our webinar. The speakers are following. Today we're having a wonderful chance to host Mr. John Simpson, who is a program director of English-speaking nation at American Consuls, and as well as Mr. Amin Riazati, who is a tourism expert from Shiraz, Iran, and as well as our wonderful expert from St. Petersburg, Aziz Alavi, who is a tour guide and as well as a social activist. And we have a tourism research team member who's representing Management Development Institute of Singapore in Tashkent, Ms. Sayora Jumaniyazova, and as well an owner of a guest house, as well as a tour guide, Mr. Nadir Afshanov from Samarkand. Well, I welcome you, dear speakers, and I think we can start with our presentations, and I give the floor to Mr. John Simpson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Osmanova. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you to the speakers and the organizers. I'll try and keep my remarks brief today, as I know we have a great lineup and list of speakers. Let me introduce myself and introduce my topic, and we'll jump right in. So my name is John Simpson. I'm the program director for the English-speaking nation program here in Uzbekistan with American Councils for International Education. I first came to Uzbekistan in 2017 as an English language fellow, where I was teaching at the World Languages University in Chilanzar. And this was my first time to Uzbekistan, and it really kind of shaped the tone, so to speak, as to my experience here. I remember when I first arrived, my students would ask me, they would say, "Sir, what do you know about Uzbekistan?" And I had never been to Uzbekistan before, so I said, "Not much." "Can you tell me?" And they'd say, "Oh yes, you have to go to Samarkand, you have to go to Bukhara, you have to go to Khiva." And so I was writing furiously these places down. And while I did get a chance to go to these places, I also made it a chance to try and read about them. And this is kind of my topic for today, this idea of empowering tourism literacy through reading, through cultural literacy, and through kind of educating ourselves as touring readers, how we can inform our experience as participants in the tourism industry through reading, through literacy, through educating ourselves, through the literature that is available. And so the three main points that I'd like to cover today include literature and how literacy can inform our cultural experience in new destinations, such as Uzbekistan for myself. Secondly, cultural literacy and how it's really relative, how where you're from can really shape how you view and experience where you're going. And this is related to language. And the third point that I'd like to make and encourage our viewers today is quite simply to read, to get out there and educate yourself about the places that you'd like to go to, read about where you want to visit, where you haven't visited, where you have visited, maybe where you're from. Because this, as Ms. Usmanova mentioned, you know, we're living in a time when travel is really restricted in a lot of places. And so domestic tourism is really rising. And so I encourage our viewers today to not only do your best to mitigate travel and tourism safely, but also to educate yourself about not only where you're from, but where you're going. And reading can be a really wonderful way to do that. So regarding the first point, literature and literacy to inform experience, think about a time when you have gone to maybe a new place and you've been quite curious about it, and you didn't know much about it, but then you maybe had some literature available that helped inform your experience. And maybe it was related or maybe it wasn't. I think, I'm not talking about guidebooks here, but for example, I recently took a trip to Southeast Asia back in 2018, and I was carrying with me a fiction book, not even a non-fiction book related to the region, but it was a very thick Haruki Murakami novel. And it just so happened that I started the book when I departed for the destination, and I finished the book 2 weeks after, exactly when my trip ended. And it's a giant book, it's like 1,300 pages. It's called IQ84, and it's a really fantastic book. But amazingly and coincidentally so, I started the book right when I left, and I finished the book right when I came back. And so that book really connected with me in terms of my experience there. Now, is the book and the location related? No, not at all. But did it inform my experience, and will I forever associate that book with that experience in those locations? Absolutely. And so in some kind of strange roundabout way, my experience there was directly associated with that cultural experience, that touristic experience, and it really shaped my perspective on how I share those memories and share those experiences with others. That being said, my experience here in Uzbekistan, for example, has been very different. I've tried to make it a point to read very intentionally about Uzbekistan, about its history, about the culture and so forth, so that I can be a better informed resident, program director, tourist, global citizen, and so forth. And so while IQ84 is indeed fiction, I've tried to read quite a bit of nonfiction, history, and so forth, to inform my experience here, because it better informs what I'm seeing. For example, when I go to Samarkand and look at the Registan, if I read about it, I can know what I'm looking at. I don't necessarily have to hire a guide. Rather, I can bring my experience in that which I've read to the destination and know beforehand what I'm looking at. And this is something that I think really helps. I think today, in an age when we're so attached to our phones and we want information like this and we expect it like that, it's very rare today to see someone, quite frankly, reading a book. I was traveling back from Nukus the other day, and I was looking around the airport terminal and noticing how many people were on their phones, and it was pretty much everybody. And then I looked around and thought, how many people are reading a book? I was the only one. And that's not to boast, that's not to brag, but it's to challenge those of us who are glued to our phones, who see our screen time rising and rising and rising. Do we have an app that can measure our page time, our book time? I don't think we do. And so I'm trying to, call me old school, but I think there's some kind of almost romanticism that I'd like to bring back to reading a book, reading to inform our cultural experience, our experience traveling, and how it can also really kind of build a stronger bond with the destinations that we're visiting. That being said, my second point, cultural literacy is really relative. So what do I mean by this? Where you come from really shapes who you are, how you see the world. For example, your native language can shape the way you see the world. I'll give a brief example that I often give in my sociolinguistics courses, which is in English, for example, Americans are often said to be very, very direct and to the point and kind of in your face. When we talk about the future, for example, the future in English is something that is in front of us. For example, when we finish high school, we have the rest of our life in front of us. Or when we get married, we walk into the future with our husband or our wife. So in English, the future is something that's in front of us. There are other cultures, though, for example, the Aymara culture in South America, where the future is actually physically behind them. Why? Because in Aymara culture, they say you cannot see the future, so it must be behind you. When I first heard this example, my mind was kind of like, this is crazy. How can the future be behind you? It's in front of you. That being said, because of their native language and their native culture, it completely transforms their worldview. And I think that literacy can have this impact on how we view our destinations when we travel. So I think that the more that we kind of focus on our ability to be literate culturally can help us define what we consider a quote unquote authentic experience in tourism. For example, I know in Central Asia, community-based tourism is a growing, rising, thriving field, and I hope that it will grow even more, because I think this kind of bridges the gap between what a lot of tourists want and expect from a quote-unquote authentic experience and benefiting the community. And Hyatt and Regency and all these big hotels, they can stay where they are. They have their market. But little communities in Kyrgyzstan, for example, can benefit from educated, literate readers who have read about their country, who know about what they're visiting, but who are also really curious to see something that's outside the walls of the Hyatt or the Regency. Finally, my third point, if I haven't been clear enough already, is really to encourage those of us who can travel to read. Those of us who can't, as I mentioned, COVID has really restricted a lot of the places we can visit right now. Read anyway. Those places will eventually open up. Hopefully with the vaccine rolling out, more of us will be able to travel, to visit some of these destinations that have been closed off. My home country, the United States, being no exception. But do read. This is something you can do. COVID has not debilitated your ability to read or debilitated your access to reading materials. So if you take away any message from my presentation today, it's please read, because this is something you can do in the privacy of your own home. You can do it alone. You can be 6 feet away from people. You can read with a mask on. If you're gonna try and tell me you can't read because of COVID, I'll have plenty of arguments for you to persuade you that yes, you can. And I would go to say that, reading is really one of the best ways to better understand and appreciate and even experience to some degree, not only your own environment, but others. Reading strengthens your brain. It promotes good literacy practices. It shows interest on your part as a tourist or visitor to a new place. It can inform your idea of a destination before you get there, while you're there, and even after you leave. When I was in India, for example, authors such as Jhumpa Lahiri, Arundhati Roy, Bishwanath Ghosh all informed my experience. More recently, in communications with this group, I've come across such terms as the touring reader, or literacy-inspired trips, or literary pilgrimage. My background is not in tourism, so these are very interesting concepts for me. But I think about places that this could impact. For example, in California, the John Steinbeck Museum is a very popular place. I've never been there myself, but as someone who places a really high importance on literacy, on reading, on tourism, this is a place I'd like to go, not only because John Steinbeck is one of my favorite authors, but because he has his own museum and he really made such an impact on American culture, especially in the West and in California. And so this is now, from communications with this group, a literary pilgrimage that I would like to make. Others include, though they're not literary related, I'd really like to go to Moscow to see the Mislav Rostropovich statue. He was a very famous cellist. I'm also a cellist, and I've looked at these pictures. And I look at this picture and I think, wow, I really want to go and see that statue of this kind of giant of not only Russian culture, but of music and my own instrument. I get so emotional thinking, how will I react being in front of this statue? I remember when I was in India and I made my first trip to the Taj Mahal. I don't know why, I was actually brought to tears. It was just such an emotional experience for me. It's not as big as you might think. It's actually kind of small, but it's also really, really, really beautiful. Lastly, I'd like to end my discussion today with the message of, in addition to read, also share. Share your experience, write, blog. What might not seem interesting to you is definitely interesting to somebody else. It may help inform them of their decision as where, when, how they wish to travel. I wish I could find more literature about Uzbekistan in English. So if you have any recommendations for that, I'm all ears. I've had some comments on my own personal blog, for example, looking or asking for certain, sometimes very specific things. And on the one hand, this is great, as some people are expressing interest in new destinations and seeking out new information. On the other hand, they're looking in the wrong place. My blog is not a destination guide or a trip planner or an experience shaper. It's merely a description of my own personal experiences, which quite likely will be different from others. So I encourage literacy and literature in the broadest sense of the term, but I also challenge readers to write and keep in mind what they're sharing and what the purpose is. So in closing, I'd like to emphasize that with COVID now being part of our regular lives and tourism being severely impacted, COVID cannot impact your ability to read. You can read with a mask on, as I mentioned, so take advantage of the resources available to you online. I'll finish with my kind of top 5 books that come to mind from my experience traveling the world. Number 5 would be The Great Game by Peter Hopkirk. I really learned a lot about the history of Central Asia from that book. Number 4 would be Death in the Andes by Peruvian writer Mario Vargas Llosa. If you haven't heard of him, check him out. He's a really great Peruvian cultural icon. Number 3 would be King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. And in this book, this is a nonfiction book, but he writes about atrocities in the Congo, which is a place I actually haven't visited yet, but it's really shaped my perspective and it's really made me want to go there. Number 2, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, a wonderful Indian author. That book really shaped how I experienced West Bengal and Calcutta a few years ago. And number 1, as I mentioned, IQ 84 by Haruki Murakami. That's a real roller coaster of a novel. So those are my top 5. Thank you very much for your attention today. I'll open it up to any questions there might be in the chat. Thank you very much, and get out there and read.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson. It was very interesting. Thank you for sharing your experience and for the books that you've suggested. I'm very glad that I've read some of them. That makes me happy. 5 topics by Mr. Simpson. So I hope for the students and those who are watching us on YouTube, this will be also helpful and also spark a certain kind of inspiration to read more. You've stressed correctly, Mr. John, that there is a term called touring reader and literary tourism, where people would visit certain destinations for particular literature, and they would read, and that would spark a certain interest or attraction to that destination, or they would correlate their experiences through perception of the book or the literature that they've encountered with. And there is also great evidence how much literature can make the destination attractive as touristic destination. For example, the very popular one probably everybody knows, those who even haven't studied tourism or not the big readers, probably heard of Eat, Pray, and Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. How much she has created this buzz around Italy, India, and Indonesia, and the tourism of Bali, India, and Italy has been boosted even more after this book and the launch of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. How many Harry Potter fans really wanted just to see the house of J.K. Rowling in Edinburgh? The sad part that when it comes to Uzbekistan, we're pretty limited in the literature list because it's not available in foreign languages. Maximum we have maybe in Russian, or some are published in French, but they're not widely popular. But some of them are before the independence, so it's a post-Soviet history of Central Asia, perhaps. But there is, with Dr. Diriz, we found an evidence. We made a list of the books which potentially was an attraction, let's say. They read this literature and they decided to travel to Central Asia. And one of the books that you've mentioned by Peter Hopkirk, The Great Game, was in the list. There were around 25 books mentioned as the trigger to travel to Central Asia, including Uzbekistan. And it's interesting that literature of neighborhood countries also have that influence. It's not just the book should be written about Uzbekistan and its culture, or it can be fiction and nonfiction. Even the poetry attracts. So the literature of Iran today is used also to build certain authentic fusion around Central Asia too. Of course, Russian classic literature as well. Today, Kyrgyzstan, for example, is using Chingiz Aytmatov's books as something to, base on their drama theater culture as well. And it's been translated to 75 languages today. But what I would wish is that our literature and cinematography would continue to develop and give a greater value rather than just some scandal stories that we have in Uzbekistan. So it was very interesting, John. So I wanted to ask, was there any particular book that you read first and then you traveled to that country? And how was it? There were pre and post expectations. Did you feel like the main character in the book? Like I did when I was in Milan reading Dan Brown. I felt like I was Professor Langdon, for example.
Good question. I haven't actually read any of the Harry Potter or Dan Brown books, but I haven't really thought of that. I haven't. It's an interesting concept to kind of want to retrace maybe a character's steps and to go and kind of visit some places and put yourself in the character's shoes. I'm sorry to say nothing really comes to mind. I do remember, though it's not literary related, I do remember my first trip to Washington, D.C. in the United States and setting foot in the National Mall and standing where Martin Luther King stood to give his famous speech, and you look down and here's this plaque and you kind of think, wow, this kind of magical moment in history happened right here. Other than that, I don't, that's a really good question. I think before I went to Kolkata, for example, I read a book called The City of Joy, which is actually by a French author. But I don't really have a good answer to your question. I'll try and see if I can find a good answer.
That's okay. I think you already mentioned that you would like to go to Moscow.
Yeah.
The book that you've read. Yeah, I think you
Absolutely.
already mentioned that. And as well as the books that you've read on Great Game, as well as The Great Silk Road by Peter Frankopan could actually spark a certain interest to take Trans-Siberian, for example.
Sure. There's one last book that I want to read when I do get the chance to go to Russia, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. There's a book that's about this composer. What's his name? He wrote Shostakovich, and there's a book that kind of writes that's about his personality, his composing of some famous symphonies, and the fate of what was Leningrad. And I'm not articulating it very well, but I'm really curious to read that book and then go to Leningrad and then go to St. Petersburg and connect the two and have that experience. That to me is something that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Mr. John. So our next speaker is, following your interest in Russia, is our expert from Russia, St. Petersburg, Miss Isa Solovey. She is a social activist and as well as a tour guide of St. Petersburg. My former colleague, Isa, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello. It's really a big honor and big pleasure to participate in this event. So I haven't been in such an international group for more than a year, I think. So all our lives have changed a lot, you know. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen because I prepared a presentation. So here we go, and I hope you can see it. Just a second. My computer is always slow with the Zoom. Can you see it well? Yeah. Okay. So to start with, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Isa Solovey, and I'm from St. Petersburg. I've been guiding for 11 years, and I started near St. Petersburg for pilgrim tours, and then I continued as a tour guide in St. Petersburg. And finally, I did Trans-Siberian and Trans-Mongolian altogether 12 times. So recently, I became eco-activist. I'm helping to gather things separately, reduce, reuse, recycle, yeah, this philosophy. And it helps a lot. It gives me back the feeling of community nowadays. So I'm going to talk about Russia and Russia is in quite unique situation during the pandemic. Our tourism is recovering, mostly domestic tourism, and in a very special way. So first, I need to tell that Russia is really absolutely unique. It cannot be compared with any other country just because of its size. The closest in size is Canada, and it is twice, more than twice smaller than Russia. So normal Russians do not travel much within the country just because it's very far and expensive. So quite often, especially the people who live in European part and in the big cities, haven't been to very many cities in Russia. Usually they travel more to Europe because it's simply closer. So for example, for me, it's just 2 hours drive to the border with Finland, and actually 10 hours drive to Moscow. So as you can see, it is much easier for me to travel to Helsinki or even to Stockholm than to go to Moscow. We have 11 time zones. We have 7 climate zones, and as you can see, and 85 regions. And as you can guess, there are very many nationalities living within the country. So even with borders closed, Russia provides opportunities for traveling for at least a decade. And to be honest, I have a big plan of traveling within my country. And thanks to pandemic, I know that will sound a bit weird because we know what it cost us all. And I don't mean money, I mean all the suffering and all what people go through. But still, pandemic somehow is empowering the development of literacy, of just knowledge of their own country among Russians in Russia. So talking about St. Petersburg, I am from St. Petersburg. I was born here. It's the second biggest city in Russia, and our population is 5 million people. But every summer, we witnessed a very interesting situation when local people were going to their country houses or taking vacations, going abroad, and St. Petersburg was flooded with domestic and international travelers. And last year, before the pandemic, in 2019, we had 8 million visitors in St. Petersburg, and most of them come within 5 months from May to September because our climate is pretty tough. So here in the picture, you can see our main museum. This is the Hermitage, and this is the line to the Hermitage. So there are, like from here, it would take about 3.5 hours to get to the entrance of the museum, and this is not the end of the line. Yeah, so that's what it was like before the pandemic. But as the pandemic started, for a couple of months, we were in strict isolation. That was April, May, and June. But by the end of June, the first wave went down and the restrictions became lighter. So people started traveling within the country, and St. Petersburg was #1 destination, especially for people from Moscow. And Moscow has something like 8% of Russian population, and this is the part of the population that has money. So they do travel a lot. So what happened with St. Petersburg? We had to find some alternative sites to show to the visitors, and the museums were mostly either closed or the entrance was really restricted. Like if before about 30,000 people could visit Hermitage per day, yeah. Now they limited it to a couple of hundreds each hour, so altogether in a day that could be a couple of thousands, so like 10 times less. And people didn't want to go indoors because they were still not feeling comfortable about being close to other people or being not even in crowds, but breathing the same air. So it was mostly about outdoor activities or some less visited places. And here you can see the three main destinations within the city. So #1 are the beautiful entrances. St. Petersburg to the houses, to the buildings. St. Petersburg was the capital of the Russian Empire. That was before 1917, before the revolution in Russia. And as it was the capital, the richest people built houses here. And the entrances to these houses are usually decorated as much as the palaces. So this is one of the most famous entrance halls and staircases in St. Petersburg. It is called Daisy because actually if you take a picture from slightly different angle, it looks like a daisy, like a flower. And it has beautiful lift, as you can see in it. So people visit such buildings. There are guides who know where to find the most spectacular decorations, and the tour can take about 2 hours within the city center. Second popular destination in St. Petersburg is a roof tour. This is quite an arguable destination because it's not always safe, and there are different opinions on it, especially among licensed guides, as I am. There are quite many official roofs where all the security measures are taken, but most people prefer to do it in this way, as you can see in this picture, because this is more romantic. You sit on the edge of the roof, and 6 floors down is your death, if you collapse. But this is still the most popular attraction in St. Petersburg nowadays, and no laws are, taken against it yet. And number 3 very popular thing in St. Petersburg now, especially among the locals, are Ekka Trails. Very many Ekka Trails were built within last few years, and again, thanks to pandemic, people started discovering them. So this is a kind of rediscovering their own region, their own city, their own suburbs for the people from St. Petersburg, and the visitors like it as well. So as you can see, the destination changed a lot. It's still St. Petersburg, but from a completely different angle. If we talk about Russia in general, domestic tourism in Russia has changed a lot as well. So before there were just a couple of regions that were mostly in minds of the Russians. And first of all, that's the region of the Black Sea. This is Sochi. And as you can see, it became quite crowded during the summertime. So we do not have any other region in Russia with subtropical climate. So they do not have competitors. Black Sea is Black Sea. We don't have any other warm sea. We have 11 seas, but all of them are quite cold. And the other destination is, of course, Baikal, but people mostly travel there in wintertime because Baikal has beautiful ice. The infrastructure of Baikal was never prepared for that many travelers. So when you travel to Russian resorts, you expect some struggles. This is a part of experience. But this year and last year, everything changed in the mind of Russians, because no matter what obstacles we face, we started traveling to remote regions. For example, the region of Caucasus. The problem is that the roads in Caucasus are really winding and rocky, and sometimes they can be blocked because the mountains, either stonefall or even avalanches. And the second thing about Caucasus is its history. I think everyone in the world knows the word Chechnya, and unfortunately it has not very positive associations, but people started traveling to Chechnya and its neighbor region, Dagestan. These are the most popular tours nowadays. Like every third acquaintance of mine went to Dagestan in last year. And if you ask them 2 years ago if they know that Dagestan has some beautiful nature, they wouldn't even mention it or like point it on the map. So this is how much it changed. And also suddenly Russians realized that actually we have a huge Arctic region. And what we have in the Arctic region, we have northern lights. So beautiful hotels were constructed. There were such hotels nearby, like in Finland before, but it was like, oh, it's luxury. It's something that people would never do in Russia. We do not have like demand for such hotels. Now we do. So now we have such hotels with panoramic roofs, and the night in this hotel can cost like, I don't know, 3 nights in Paris. So the prices are really high because the season for the Northern Lights is very short. But the line of people who want to spend at least 1 night in such a hotel, lying in your bed and watching this beautiful aurora borealis, is even bigger than the amount of the houses. So this is how tourism changed within Russia. Surprisingly, the borders were not completely closed. Our closest and biggest friend is Turkey. And you know, nowadays, right now, Turkey is closed for Russians and they have very strict lockdown inside the country. But in summertime, it was different. And lots of Russians traveled to Turkey. If before Turkey has always been one of the major destinations for Russians who wanted to swim in the sea and enjoy warm climate. But mostly Russians either went to all-inclusive hotels with their own infrastructure when you don't need to even leave the territory of the hotel, or they went to some popular sites. So for example, Pamukkale was a very famous destination. I was there when I was 8 first, and it wasn't as crowded as it became later, but it has always been a popular destination. So now lots of adventurous Russians who haven't traveled to Turkey before and even looked down in this destination like, I'm not that person who goes to all-inclusive hotels. So now they had no choice. They had only Turkey open abroad. And they started looking for what they can do apart from all-inclusive. And suddenly, again, they found out that actually we have Cappadocia. And you can see absolutely incredible scenery there. And you can go hiking, horse riding, you can have a hot air balloon ride. And very many people went to Cappadocia, went to Istanbul, rented a car, traveled around Turkey, but Cappadocia was the main destination. And also among those who like hiking tours, and for whom, for example, Camino de Santiago in Spain wasn't available anymore, but they still wanted to go to some trail by the sea in better climate. They found out that Turkey has such a trail, and it's even more ancient. It's called the Lycian Way, and it takes a couple of days. It goes along the Mediterranean shore. It has mountains, it has beautiful bays, and it has quite a lot of infrastructure for hiking. So people started traveling to this part of Turkey. And here you see my presentation is like before and after. Yeah, that's how it's changing. So all in all, if we sum up all these trends in St. Petersburg, in Russia in general, and international tourism in Russia, we can see that there are actually quite many positive changes that were encouraged by pandemic. And I think it's very important to keep these changes because people started doing researches before they travel about their own country and about the destinations that they considered to be well known. So I think this is what we can do to keep this positive trends. And first of all, we need to keep encouraging the interest to these so-called second row destinations. This will help to redirect some routes, develop local infrastructure, like in Dagestan now they are really building the roads. We can offer more adventurous experiences because this is what actually people are interested in, and extend the range of destinations to choose from. So not just Baikal, Sochi, St. Petersburg, but very many destinations in Russia can offer great experiences. And finally, it will lead to more equal spread of wealth and more satisfaction of travelers at the end of the day. And this is what we are all looking for happy travelers and happy people at the destinations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aisha. It was very interesting, and thank you for driving my attention. I haven't heard about the trail in Turkey, and now I will think about it. So also, Aisha, we have a question from those who are watching. Yes, Ms. Denisa?
Yes, also they are asking, well, first of all, they are saying that they love St. Petersburg, and I personally share this with them because I'm fascinated by the city. And they would like to ask, like, when is the best season to visit St. Petersburg in these conditions that we have now?
Right now, we need to monitor the rules of the government because they are changing every day, and it really depends on the situation with pandemic. So when there are more cases, the rules become stricter. But if we talk in general, I really vote for off-season traveling, because when you travel in high season, which in St. Petersburg is white nights, it's the end of June, when we have very short time between the sunset and the sunrise. All the hotels are fully booked, streets are crowded, and you expect you will have your own personal romantic experience, but you actually spend all your vacation in the crowd. So my favorite time in St. Petersburg is the first 2 weeks of October. The weather is still bearable. You have beautiful, what we call golden autumn, and streets and museums are not crowded.
Thank you very much. And well, I hope that this October we will be able to visit St. Petersburg finally. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. It was very nice to see how the people's travel tastes are changing and how they are rediscovering the destination that they've been to already. When they thought that they knew everything, they've tried everything, that they are coming to another alternatives, which actually creates a certain, which actually drives the attention from heavily visited areas and gives them a certain rest, which is very sustainable in terms of that. I can also see those trends in Uzbekistan where domestically people are traveling because international travel is very expensive currently due to the flights as well. Not thinking of accommodation prices have lowered, but getting to the certain destination became a luxury, and traveling was always a luxury, but is even more luxury today. And I can see Uzbeks discovering more, and there is a demand for the companies who are organizing tours, small group tours too, because people miss this engagement, this people effect that they had. Even for a couple of hours, they try to get out. And me myself, one day I want to see the poppy field, the other day I want to be under rain. And recently I've been using the services of these agencies when I could plan myself, but that notion, that feeling of people getting together, even if you don't know them, and going somewhere and discovering and having very different experience, because everybody have a different motivation from going to that particular place. I felt good about it. And we had this a service of a guide who was giving incredible information that I thought I knew certain things, and I understood that no, there's so much to learn. And the same about the destinations we discovered. I can see there is so much attention to go to Zamin today, the Zak region, as well as the old good cities of Samarkand and Bukhara. We recently traveled to Moynak, the Aral Sea. We did the tourist way, actually. We had very limited time. I'm saying tourist way is like we visited really the touristic sites. We usually go a little beyond that, but we had very limited time to engage with the community and all. But it was fantastic experience, and I know what you're talking about and how it feels. We have another question Ms. Denise is mentioning.
Yeah, so talking about my experience in traveling to Arctic region, I don't have one. So I'm always off the trend. When everyone goes to one destination, I wait till the popularity goes down, because prices go down together with popularity, and then I go. But also I actually was isolating for 14 weeks strictly at home during the season of Aurora Borealis last year. And this year, I'm thinking of doing it with my friends, because when you rent it like 3 or 4 of you together, it's a little bit more affordable. So this is my plan still. I have never seen Northern Lights, although I live like less than 24 hours away from it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Asam. Okay, so the next speaker is Mr. Amin from Iran, from I think it's a city of poets, if I'm not mistaken, but you can correct me. Mr. Amin Riazadi, please.
Sure. Hello, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you guys. I'm Amin Riazadi. I'm from Iran and the beautiful city of Shiraz in Iran. You're right, Goli, yeah. Shiraz is the city of literature, city of love, rose and nightingale. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm working in tourism industry for 15 years, if we count last year, of course. I don't know if it's countable or not. As Asya mentioned, we were mostly at home last year. But anyway, yeah, it's 15 years that I'm working in tourism industry, mostly as tour guide. But because I studied tourism, I also do some academic work as well. But my passion and my love is tour guiding, so I miss it a lot. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen so you can see some slides that I made. I'm going to introduce very, very briefly my beautiful country, Iran, as there should be many students as our audience today. So it can be, I think, a great opportunity to use this pause in tourism to look for new destination, to create new destination. And I believe that we have to improve more regional cooperation. I always heard about lots of similarities between cultural similarities between Iran and Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, but the time that I traveled, I had the chance to travel to Uzbekistan, I discovered myself how close these two cultures are, and the same with Tajikistan, I think. So I think there is a big opportunity to do kind of great regional cooperation here, and it can be a great destination. I think that tourism policymakers should think of this, and they have to pay more attention on this kind of similarities that we have, cultural, historical, and it can be a great destination for post-COVID, that period. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. Here it is. So can you see my screen? Perfect. Here is the map of Iran, and you can see it's not very far from Uzbekistan. You can see Tashkent over there. It's written over there. I hope that there would be more flight between these two amazing countries in future. So as you can see, Iran is a very mountainous country. Just some words to describe this beautiful country. Iran is a mountainous, arid, and ethnically diverse country, which is located in southwestern Asia. Much of Iran consists of central desert plateau, which is ringed on all sides by amazing mountain ranges. And that most of the country is above 460 meters, with 1/6 of the country over actually 1900 meters. Iran has long played an important role in the region as an imperial power, and later because of its strategic position and abundant natural resources, especially petroleum, as a factor, unfortunately, in colonial and superpower rivalries. Just history of Iran is very great, but very quickly we take a look at the history of Iran. As you can see, a beautiful picture of one of our main attraction in Iran, which is Persepolis, our historical attraction. So geological and natural evidence prove that Iran was home to one of mankind's first major cultures, ahead of every part of the world except Mesopotamia, Egypt, and India. You know that by approximately 6 million BC, village farming was widespread over much of the Iranian plateau. In the late 4th and early 3rd millennia, a brilliant ancient civilization came to existence, which is called Elamite civilization, southwest of Iran. But the golden period of Iran history is definitely the Achaemenid Empire, where when Persepolis was constructed. I show you the picture of Persepolis. And Islam came to Iranian plateau in 7th century, and it brought that lots of things with itself, and it affected the whole history, culture, and art of this ancient land. So all those the ancient history that we have in this country, the diverse geography and ethnic, create thousands of cultural and natural resources, which form a great tourist potential and a brilliant destination for travelers as adventure. So when we look at the history of Iran, when we look at the geography, we can expect that actually a super destination that everybody would love to come and visit this country. But I will go further, and we will see that unfortunately it's not like this because of several reasons that I'm going to mention them briefly. I just brought some pictures of some beautiful cultural and historical and some natural sites in Iran. This is the amazing 17th century Naqsh Jahan Square in Isfahan, which is one of the highlights of the country. I just go very quickly. This is the brilliant Pink Mosque in my own city, Shiraz, which is a very unique mosque in Iran, very small but very unique. And except that all those cultural and historical places and sites, we have beautiful natural sites, such as amazing deserts that we have in central part of Iran. We have also lovely ski resorts all around the country, especially in northwestern part, and even in west of the country. We have lovely ski resorts. Sorry, do you hear me?
Sorry, it's a problem with YouTube, I guess. So.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so I keep going. Yeah, so I was saying that at first glance, Iran seems to be desert, but there are amazing ski resorts all around the country. And of course, we have amazing islands and beaches in southern part of Iran, where we have Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman that I didn't bring pictures. But unfortunately, because of several reasons, political especially reasons, Iran is not that expected tourism destination that we think. If you please look at this slide that I brought some information from Travel Competitiveness Report in 2019. Based on this index, enabling environment, infrastructure, natural and cultural resources, travel and tourism policy, and enabling condition, Iran stands 89 in the world in tourism sector, which is not good at all, because we think that in terms of having attractions, natural and historical and cultural attractions, we are among top 20th countries. But here, as you can see, we stand 89, which is not good at all for our tourism industry. And as you can see here, only 2.9% of Iran GDP is based on tourism industry. Maybe the main reason is oil, because the country, that is one of the biggest producer of oil, and tourism experts in Iran thinks to the time that we have oil, the policymakers and politicians don't, that think of tourism, unfortunately. But there was a plan that in 2027, they were planning to increase the GDP to 7.5%. But I think with the current situation, the pandemic and etc., it would be very difficult. I don't say it won't be possible, but it's very, very difficult. This is one of the other statistics that I brought here. In different years, the number of the tourists that we have had in the country. But I have to mention, when I say that in 2018, there were more than 7 million tourists. More than 5 million of these travelers or tourists were from neighbor countries, and they came to Iran because of medical tourism, especially from Iraq, from Azerbaijan, and the Arab countries of the Persian Gulf. Maybe about 5 million of these 7 million were actually travelers from our neighbors, that they mostly came for medical tourism and medical reason to Iran, which is a great opportunity, I think, in this country, because of different reasons. Medical service is quite cheap in Iran, and it can be a great opportunity for, again, policymakers to think more of this case and bring more and more, tourists who are looking for medical reasons as well. But COVID-19 and what COVID-19 did to tourism industry. You know that, like many other countries, COVID crisis has been a huge shock to the tourism economy, and it impacted people's livelihood, neighborhood, and business. From March 2020 to March 2021, the number of incoming tours, unfortunately, in Iran, almost, came down to zero. It excluded the medical tourism, because still we have patients from the neighbor countries that they come and visit Iran, but they are mostly now restricted only to the medical centers and hospitals. They don't go to visit sites, unfortunately. So incoming tourism, what we work on it specifically was unfortunately zero. It was terrible for the whole industry and for the whole country. That the consequences of COVID-19 pandemic and tourism, that what happened, but just to review them, definitely the pandemic will affect the travel behavior. Later, we will actually see that most of the traveler, it will change the way of the travel. So definitely, we will see the emergence of new niches and market segments. And definitely there will be greater focus on safety protocols and contactless tourism experiences. Safety and hygiene have become key factors to select destinations and tourism activities. Definitely people will be more likely to prefer private solutions when traveling. They will avoid big gatherings and crowded places, and they prefer more private means of transportation, which will be not good for what we know as sustainable tourism. Imagine that everybody wants to have his own private vehicle when traveling to different destinations. So I imagine what will happen. Definitely the pandemic will actually make a structural change in tourism supply, which is expected to across the ecosystem. Not all businesses will survive, unfortunately, after the crisis, and the capacity in tourism sector is likely to be reduced for a period, limiting the recovery. Unfortunately, the pandemic will force many people who are working in tourism sector to move to the other sectors. So definitely after COVID pandemic is over, that policymakers should think of that. And here we have to pay more attention to the students of tourism, and those who are studying right now tourism. We have to use them in future more and more. Reduced investment will call for active policies to incentivize and restore investment in tourism sector to maintain the quality of the tourism offer and promote a sustainable recovery. And definitely after the pandemic, the travel advisor will become essential. People will look more for travel agents, the trusted travel agents, to be sure that the tour that they are booking are more, that they're much safer than before. What should be done to recover tourism? Very generally, I'm talking. Definitely, the first step should be rebuilding consumer trust and confidence. The second step should be a strengthened multilateral cooperation and a strong support is essential to reactive tourism. This is the part that I really insist on, that I said we should use this opportunity to rebuild and to think of new destinations, especially in our region. Definitely, as Asya mentioned, domestic tourism is maybe the only part which is benefited right now, but it will be temporary, but later it will go to regional, tourism, and then finally it will be developed to international tourism. So I think it's the best opportunity, this gap and this pause, to improve the regional cooperation and make and design newer destinations. For sure, countries such as Iran and I think Uzbekistan, they need more governmental support in this case, because most of the private sectors are badly affected because of this pandemic, and definitely they need more support from their government to be recovered. And improving the evidence base to inform policy and business decision will be key through information gathering, research, and data analysis. Investment, definitely in effort to build back better, to build back better in the post-COVID world, it would be critical to retain and inject capital investment in tourism sector so that it can achieve its true potential as a vehicle for growth and development of different countries. I think, at least in Iran, I think there will be a bigger, the tendency toward nature. So there should be invest in nature-based solution for sustainable tourism. Further investment in the physical as well as technological infrastructure is needed definitely, and greater public-private cooperation is also needed to recover tourism post-COVID, I think, which is as soon as possible. But just to make a conclusion, we have seen when we look at the history, because of different reasons, tourism had been stopped, but tourism never died. So as I mentioned, it can be a big opportunity to encourage innovation, drive new business models, explore new niches markets, and open up new destinations, and to move toward fairer, more sustainable and resilient models of tourism development. The pandemic has once again exposed structural shortcomings in the tourism system and the vulnerability to external shocks. There is an urgent need to diversify and strengthen the resilience of the tourism economy, to better prepare for future shocks, to address long-standing structural weaknesses, and encourage the digital low-carbon transformation that will be essential to shift to a stronger, fairer, and more sustainable of tourism development. And at the end of my presentation, I would like to thank the whole medical staff, those who are actually giving their life to save the world and human beings from the pandemic that we have and the crisis that we have, unfortunately, at the moment in the world. Thank you very much for listening. And I think I can stop sharing the just a moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amin.
Pleasure.
It was a very insightful presentation, and thank you for sharing beautiful photos of Iran. I could see Asia's facial expression when she saw a pink mosque and Naqsh Jahan, right, in Shiraz. We both wanted to go to Iran for a long time, and I hope we will make it happen soon. And you mentioned the cooperation and joint tours between Uzbekistan and Iran, and I think this is included to the plan. There are some long-term strategies built between the Iranian embassy in Tashkent and the Ministry of Tourism and Sports here. with more, let's say, with less restrictions, with easing restrictions in border crossings and also flights, and having more direct flights to Tehran, at least, I think that would be more possible. There's a lot in common, and I do remember seeing the photos of Yazd and seeing the photos of Bukhara. I could not spot the difference. I could not tell which was actually Bukhara or Yazd. It's incredible similarity in some of the cities and architecture. As well, thank you very much for your insight of a post-COVID policies that we should consider. And I think we have some questions by our viewers.
Yes, indeed. First of all, they are saying that they are excited and now they would like to go to Iran. So I think we already have like an itinerary, first to St. Petersburg, then to Iran. I mean, they are asking, could you please share some ideas regarding what kind of dishes they should try when they go there? Because they already want to see everything and now it's about gastronomy, what they should try.
So as I mentioned, we have diverse ethnics in Iran, and different regions of Iran, they have their own specialties. Let me say my favorite actually dish, which is called pesenjan. It's I'm not good in cooking, but the ingredients are chicken, pomegranate sauce, and walnut, which is ground walnut. So it's all mixed together. Just imagine how tender the chicken will be when it's cooked in this sauce, and it's served with rice. But the national dish in Iran, like many other countries in the region, is grilled meat, kebab. But as I mentioned before, there are different specialties from different sides of the country. So whenever you are here in Iran, you can try these delicious dishes.
Thank you very much. I mean, thank you. It is close to lunch, so people are thinking of food and are curious, what is it like about food in Iran, I guess. It's nice. Thank you very much for the viewers for curiosity and also posting the questions for active participation. Okay, our next speaker is the youngest among us, Ms. Sayora Jumaniyazova, who is a member of tourism research team at MDS Tashkent.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk here, and I'm really sorry for not being able to turn my camera on because of some health issues, because like spring without allergy is impossible. So if you let me, I want to share my screen that I prepared some presentation. So it is starting from here. So talking about myself, my name is Sayora, and as Ms. Kuda has already mentioned, I'm the youngest. And to talk compared to other speakers that have talked earlier, I'm just beginning in the way that they have already gone through. So which means like I don't have very much experience to share, but here today I am to share the evaluation of residence tourism development perception, which like the result of the survey and the research that we have done with our team members. And I'm going to start my presentation by talking about our tourism research team that we have in our university. And the tourism research team like consists of close to 10 members, and it is controlled or monitored by our two very smart and beautiful teachers. And one of the biggest aims of our research team is to evaluate the destination not very popular destinations of Uzbekistan according to the following criteria. What I mean by not very popular destination, we all know, many of us have heard about Samarkand, Bukhara, and Khiva of Uzbekistan, but we have other spots in our country that we can market as a tourist destination, and our research team focuses on going to such kind of places and evaluating their tourism potential. And when we are conducting a research, there are 7 categories that we usually pay attention to. And the first one that we are usually focusing is quality of a strategy for tourism management on a local level, which means how this tourism management can bear the local participants who are coming from other regions. And the next one is a quality information and hospitality. How tourists can get information and how well they are welcomed in a spot. And then existence and quality of offered tourism services, how quality, how compatible the services operate in the community, and is it suitable that we can invite more tourists to the spot. And then accessibility of area and its tourist attractions, namely how easily we can get to this destination. And attractions and events, how many attractions and how well they are organized, and what kind of events we can use in order to draw attention of the tourists. And another most important thing of our research team is community-based tourism. Since these areas are not very popular, the community-based tourism is very developed there, and we want to teach the local people, the residents, the knowledge about community-based tourism and how they can take advantage of this type of tourism in their businesses. So, and moving to the goals of our research team, nowadays, first of all, we are in this very first beginning. Namely, now we are focusing on rise awareness of Uzbekistan. Namely, we are discovering and rediscovering some of the unpopular places, and we are going to draw the attention of the people who are going to travel through the Uzbekistan by offering new places. And then we are going to move to the Central Asian countries. Actually, we're planning to organize trips, research trips starting from last year, but unfortunately we couldn't do it. And we are hoping that as soon as the borders open and the international travel is allowed, we can continue to our research trips and research fields to other Central Asian countries and raise awareness of the tourism in those countries as well. And then we are hoping to assist in tourism planning, providing better insights with marketing research. As we said, we have a lot of beautiful places, but they are not marketed well, and therefore not many people are aware of the presence of such cities and such spots. And we are hoping and aiming that we can at some point help those tourism providers to attract more attentions. And then we are focusing on conducting direct contact with community. Namely, we are trying to interview everyone who are involved in the providing tourism services. It can be from taxi drivers, simple taxi drivers who can give a lift to go to this area, and simple beachers or simple people who are living just next to the tourist camp or the yurt camp that we are seeing as a potential community-based tourism spot. And the last one would be engaging the youth. Namely, we are focusing on more teaching about tourism to the young people, and we are trying to give them more awareness of their importance in the development of the tourism. And talking about the residents, why we think in planning tourism, not only tourism, but planning in anything. The first reason would possibly be that if we pay attention to the opinions of the residents, and if we can develop very good connection with the residents, we can have a more authentic experience. when we develop tourism, when we invite tourists, we can provide the tourists with more authentic experience. Namely, they can see the spot with the eyes of the local people. And then the second reason would be following the rules of the sustainability. Namely, if we want to develop any kind of tourism in a spot, we cannot just come to the area and tell the local people to leave, or we cannot cause a harm to them. Namely, we need to find this common area with them and develop a tourism that helps not only the government, or helps not only to some like rich people, but also helps the local people, the community, to sustain and to grow. And the last one would be they have more local knowledge, and they know how to develop tourism, like not tourism, but how to develop tourism in the spot better than us, because they have grown up feeling all the advantages of this place. Therefore, they can help us to develop the tourism in a better way, because using their knowledge. So therefore, knowing their perception about tourism development is a must before developing any kind of tourism in any kind of place. And chasing the data, mainly talking about the statistics that we have collected through the research that we have done. So we had 128 online responses that we have conducted between like mostly students, mostly in our platform, and mostly like our students, namely our universities, voted for this. And the questions were mostly about their tourism literacy and how far they have traveled so far, and their ideas about tourism development in some spots. And we have I will share the results later on, but altogether, the online results was 128. And moving to the offline on-site surveys, depending on the places that we have visited, we provided paper-based questions, and there were like close to 100 people. So it is from everyone, like as I mentioned earlier, from taxi drivers to everyone who is involved in providing tourism services. And then we had like 13 in-depth interviews with the owners of the community-based tourism or community-based tourism activities, and like sharing, like giving them more like business-related questions and their ideas about what they're doing and how they are helping to tourism development in Uzbekistan. And I'm going to link the research to the case studies, namely to the places that we have visited, and we have mostly focused on in our interviews, like in offline interviews. These are 3 places. The first one is Yangabad, that is located in Tashkent region, and the place is usually very popular with its Soviet-style architecture. You can really feel that you are living in this Soviet time when you visit. And it has, like, Yangabad has a very good potential for nature-based tourism as well. Like, you can organize activities there. And the second spot that we have used was Hayat Village, located in Namesake region. It is another region of Uzbekistan, and the importance of this place was house. And unfortunately, this Hayat Village, though being very like eco-friendly and pioneer in the field, it is located very far from the city, and it is very difficult to reach. However, there are very nice initiatives to promote the tourism. And the last place that we have visited was Parkent. That is more popular, more like a gastronomic tourism destination, but it is in a more local content. So we have interviewed the owners of the businesses in those places in our research. And talking about the results that we have come up, the first one is like when we conducted research, we were a bit sad that not many people are so willing to share their ideas about tourism. Maybe like they're afraid to share, or maybe they don't think that their opinions are counted. Whenever we wanted to discuss the topics with let's say that with the people who are who are working in the tourism industry, like let's say that in a very small restaurant, our questions, they usually neglected the questions. I'm not saying that they become like not friendly. They were very friendly, but when we talked about academic stuff, they didn't really want to give their ideas. And we also thought at some point that maybe they don't have the ideas about this thing at all. But we were really sure that we could get some data about, or we could get some perceptions about their tourism development. And the second thing is that they do not see what they're doing as a tourism activity, namely these guest houses, these restaurants, or these small restaurants, these cafes. Yes, they like running and they like operating their businesses, but they usually have not very huge mindset about developing their tourism activity, or they usually do not even consider that what they are doing is helping to develop tourism. They usually think that they are doing it in order to earn some money, or they are doing their businesses in order to just because their other ancestors has also done, or just some neighbors of them also do it, therefore they are just repeating what others are doing. And the third one is not being able to see the potential of tourism. Namely, when we conducted a questionnaire, or when we had a discussion with some of the owners, they said it's kind of temporary business. Namely, they see that tourism will not continue to develop, and therefore maybe at some point in the future they might stop what they're doing, what their business, and they might change it to another thing that might be quite popular in very local context, but not international. Namely, they usually don't believe that tourism can really help them to expand their businesses. And the next thing is that's very we have concluded that that's one of the many biggest reasons that misperception about tourism. Namely, when we think or when we talk about tourism, they usually understand it in a more historical content, because Uzbekistan has a destination image as a more historical place, which is Bukhara, Samarkand, and Khiva. And therefore, when we talk about tourism, they usually imagine those places, and they think that in order to be successful in the tourism industry, you need to know the history well, and you need to be able to talk about the history. Though they do not understand that when we talk about tourism, there are different types of tourism. So they usually more aware of the historical tourism, cultural tourism, than the adventurous or gastronomic tourism. So that is one of the things that hinder them to develop their businesses. And the next is language barrier. So there were some people that had a nice opinions about tourism and had a nice bright perceptions about the development of tourism. However, they admitted that one of the things that stops them to be successful or to develop their ideas is language barrier, because they have grown up only speaking one language, and whenever they are developing the tourism, they feel that their language skills will not be sufficient, or their language skills will not help them to be more successful. Just one example would be that a lot of people that's not secret that people who, if you talk about domestic tourism, people who are usually travel are from the capital, from the Tashkent, and most people in Tashkent usually speak Russian language. But when we visit to other unpopular places, those three places, they usually speak our local language, namely Uzbek, and that here comes some kind of not a conflict, but a bit misunderstanding that not many people in those places can speak Russian, and therefore they usually feel ashamed, or they usually feel very lagged behind when they are serving such clients who are speaking non-Uzbek language. And then they do not have much traveling experience themselves, namely those people who are serving at those places haven't traveled much themselves, therefore they cannot give many, they don't have much to talk about, and they don't have something to compare between what they are doing and what they have seen earlier. And then another thing is traveling for entertainment. as that is something related to the fourth point, namely, when we talk about traveling, they usually understand it as only for entertainment purposes, not for learning purposes, not for education purposes. When we talk about traveling, they usually see it as entertainment. And then not being able to recognize the power of domestic tourism. Again, like when we talked about tourism and when we gave the questions about tourism, they said that, oh, a tourist will not come here, or they say like, oh, like it's very difficult to develop tourism here because not many people from foreign countries will come here. But when we talked about the domestic tourism, not many of them were aware that there was a terminology or even a flow of the domestic tourism. And next point here, we are like expectation coming from the results and the questionnaires that we have talked. Here we have expectations that we can try to do in order to develop the tourism and in order to educate the local people. The first one is prepare, namely we need to educate the young, namely we need to teach local residents about tourism, and we need to empower them to be more tourism literate. And the next thing is like a traveling, namely we need to give local people more chance or create opportunities for them to travel so as to they can gain experiences, and they will have something to compare, and they will have more better understanding of what they are doing. And the next one is like a language, namely we need to try to minimize the language barrier that is hindering to improve the tourism literacy. And the next one is trainings. We need to organize different kind of trainings, invite very professional people to have meetings, and we need to teach them what they're doing is right, and how to go to successful way. Namely, they have all the basic necessities, but some of them don't know even how to go to this successful spot. And last one is networking. Namely, we need to help solo businesses in order to develop. Namely, we need to help them to go to this successful people. And I want to end my presentation with a quote that is, travel is the only thing that you buy that makes you richer. Namely, compared to other material things, like yes, we can buy phones, we can buy other expensive materials, but traveling is the only thing that helps us to be rich in more experiential way. So thank you, and that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sayora. It was very interesting understanding that you are currently in Jizak and having a slightly difficulties with connection, but thank you for trying and presenting the results that we've obtained. I would like to give a little more insight on the presentation Sayora delivered now. Sayora is a member of tourism research team that we formed at Tourism and Hospitality School, which is co-led by me and Dr. Denisa. And we undertake research on a variety of topics. And the recent one that we've just started after COVID was understanding the perception of the residents on how they perceive actually what is the significance of tourism development. And as you understand, by ignoring the fact that what residents desire, think, or perceive about tourism is basically planning the strategies blindly. And by obtaining certain level of the results, we would like to present them to the Ministry of Tourism and Sports today. So it will be relevant to undertake a certain tourism domestic planning, because recently we've heard from Minister of Tourism himself that we're expecting 1.7 million tourists this year amid COVID-19 and the barriers it puts. But we understand that domestically people are traveling more, and encouraging people to create certain infrastructure around them and also benefiting directly from tourism does require us to understand the residents' perception as well as if they have any understanding of tourism and its power, its influence as an industry. And we have, it's an ongoing research. So what Sayora have shared with you is a 10%. I would say it's a tip of the iceberg, but we would like to share with you about it today, that most of our residents, those who undertook this online survey, were under the age of 25, and they had somehow understanding of the tourism development potential, and most perceives tourism as a way to have an entertainment, to have fun. So there was a question, Denise, right, by our viewers?
Yes, indeed. There was a question regarding the practical usage of our results, but I guess you already answered to it, that we are willing to pass the information to the ministry so they can plan everything accordingly and their policies accordingly, and maybe support and help people who work in tourism, specifically now. And of course, on the basis of the perception of residents, maybe reshape the way they present the policies in order to ensure that, like, what people want and what people can offer, they coincide with each other.
Yes. We've started with the change of the trends and the taste of the tourists, right? And we learn a lot what tourists would like, what they're expecting from us when we're receiving here, what experiences we should give. And but there is a very little study about what residents want from the industry and how and in which way they could engage so they could benefit directly. And when we put this topic of empowering tourism literacy through empowering communities, it is very important for us to understand the actual knowledge of the residents on this topic. And when we see that the residents mostly see traveling as entertainment, is there an infrastructure for them to address this interest in particular, or how touristic facilities will be used from now on for domestic traveling, or what kind of touristic products the agents could create to address those particular interests. And as well as we could see people who are engaged in tourism services, they have a huge barriers in sharing their ideas, whether there's a lack of business mindset, whether there is not equal opportunity. The more we go into regions, the less the opportunities and availability of resources become. The closer to the capital it is, the more people are aware what they can do and how they can use the resources that they have. But in the three cases that we have given with Yangiabad Parkland and Hayat Village in Forest region in Jizak, it is three different cases where people who live in Parkland, which is Tashkent region, they have more or less clear idea of how they can turn their services into money, how they can turn their houses into a tourist attraction or their activities if they're farmers. And Yangiabad is the area where the ecotouristic trails could be shaped. And it was already there since Soviet time, but not many actually are aware of it unless they are engaged into sports, for example, because some sport bases are located there. So therefore, some people know about it, but the others don't. And raising the awareness of such places is very important, because it will take the heaviness out from, for example, visiting Tashkent too much, visiting Samarkand too much, or Bukhara, also finding a certain different cultural content to give and unfold it as a new touristic product. That is the practical contribution of this study. I would think we're still looking for it, because we need more research trips to the areas and a little bit more free time as well. But I think there is a promise in it, and I think there is a certain contribution and potential to learn this topic. And if we don't have further questions, I would like to give the turn to Mr. Nadir Rafshanov from Samarkand, the owner of the guest house in Samarkand, who recently opened a beautiful guest house that everybody talks about. And please, Nadir, the floor is yours.
hello, Gulnoza. Hello, Amin. Asya, we met a few. Thank you for organizers of this webinar. It's yes, okay. I'm just afraid of my connection from Samarkand, that's why. So, dear participants, I want to speak about today about the problem of the saving the heritage of all Uzbekistan and especially of Samarkand. But briefly, I want to speak about myself, introduce myself. My name is Nadir. And I'm working in tourism for my first guide certificate, and then as a manager of the big hotel, and now I on the stage of my another project as guest house, and I explain why later. If you know.
Mr. Nadir, I think your connection is not stable.
Yeah.
It's better if you switch off your video.
Just
yeah.
I have another.
If it is too heavy for your connection, it is okay if you switch off your video and we can hear your voice. That's fine. As we understand, there's no development, there is no development knowledge and connection.
Okay.
And unfortunately,
yes.
This is the case.
But voice is okay? Can I continue?
Yes, this is much better.
Okay. And as you know, Samarkand is under the UNESCO's World Heritage as under the topic of crossroads of the cultures. Samarkand have a different stage in its history and have a different stage on its architectural development. As you know, Uzbekistan is mainly represented as cultural tourism destination. So you can see the buildings here, the crafts and arts, and the exteriors of the streets, how they're looking is very important. So we are facing in Uzbekistan, especially in Samarkand, I speak about Samarkand, we are facing in such problems as the rapid development of economy, which is sometimes damage the historical heritage, architectural heritage. Samarkand is not, we should understand it, the problem is that some our government or government officials or functionals from tourism, they don't understand that Samarkand is not just tourism for Registan Square, Guri Emir Mausoleum, and etc. The whole of the city, the all of the activity, life of the city is World Heritage. And last 5 years, we can see when the political situation is changed and it's more the economy is more liberated. We are seeing that economical business activity is more activated, and it is connected with World Heritage sites. The city center where I live also, it is a Russian part, European part of Samarkand, whereas the buildings has exteriors of European style architecture. But the owners of these buildings already left, immigrate, returned to Russia. As the Russians lived, Jewish people lived here, and more different European nations lived in this area. After independence of Uzbekistan, after the collapse of Soviet Union, they moved to their historical countries, most of them, not everybody, of course. And new owners from the different areas do not understand they're not, of course, bad persons or what, but just not enough educated the place where they're living or they bought. They're creating a new activities on that buildings, as for example, build new houses, remove old houses and build new, or remove old houses and build a new shops, offices, and etc. And we face it to the big problem that we are losing the world heritage of Samarkand, not just in the European part, in different part, but I think that the European part, because it's considered as a center of the city, have a big damage of destruction, demolishings. So that's why if you allow me, I want to show a bit photos. So dear organizers, please switch off my okay. No, позже. Так, включить мое видео. For example, is the for example, in art and in the mind of our people, there is that like old houses, old buildings, which is not Registan Square or Gurimir, is not interesting for foreigners, for tourists. Let's start new, beautiful, beautiful, as they imagine, buildings and remove old houses of Samarkand. That it is start in 2010. It started in 2010, but this is fresh. It is last year. Now, this building is removed, and this just a minute, please. This giant 3-story building is built. Yes, the small, cute, elegant buildings are demolished, and this such a big building. Not just Russian architecture, historical pre-revolutionary historical architecture, but the Soviet masterpieces, Soviet modernism architecture also. Look, environmental plans in some. It was in the album. The building exists, but facade is like this. And this one. And we have also
I think there is a very poor connection with you, Nadir. Yes, it's okay. It happens. Nadir, you're mute. You're mute. Unmute. Yes.
The second city of Samarkand, I'm sorry, of Uzbekistan, but we still have such a
second capital.
I'm sorry. Yes, and the last photo, just let me show. There is an old pre-revolutionary building, yes, and it's lose its historical facade exterior. Is it this facade? Okay. So I gave you a bit visual information. I gave you a bit visual information, and you understand the problem. And then I want to continue a bit, just a few minutes, how we can solve these problems, how we can solve these problems. We're doing activity in Samarkand, not just me. Of course, there is a few groups of the civil citizens of Samarkand who interesting to promote our heritage, to preserve our heritage. And I think we need to start to education all the citizens of Samarkand, that importance of Samarkand and its historical value is not just to came and see the Registan Square and to change that mind, which is the heritage from Soviet times. We had interest company in Soviet times, as you know, the just and only tourist company, and tourists had a methods that and they have imaginations that the tourists in Uzbekistan, it's a group of the tourists which came to Samarkand by bus. And they just see this historical spots as the museum and few architectural monuments, have a lunch, dinner, one night stay and return. But international tourism is changed, especially when the Uzbekistan had the reforms in tourism as a no visa, as a visa-free regime, and we need to, as all the society of Uzbekistan, we need to understand that tourist, the modern tourist, is not the tourists of the past, of the yesterday, is not a group of the pensioners who came just to see Registan and have a photo and return. We need to understand that the tourist is now, he's more younger than before. He uses apps and maps and taxi services. We can freely walk and freely go everywhere of the city and want to explore the city, and we want to show, we need to show the Samarkand in all of the diversity of its culture. Its Russian part, its European part, its Jewish part, in all the city, in Timurid part, and archaeologist part. Of course, after our work of the many civil groups, civil activists, and of course the specialists, the archaeologists, and the some honorable scientists, these years I see that government also hearing us. Just a few months ago, there is a new article in Uzbekistan to preserve the UNESCO's heritage, and there is many efforts of government also to preserve, and they starting to explain to people, to inhabitants of Samarkand, that we need to follow rules, to not to build too much they're like tall buildings, because we have a 10 meters regulation. You can build in Samarkand just 10-meter building. It's 2 or 3 stories buildings, to not to to not to damage, yes, damage landscape of historical damage of Samarkand. I'm sorry, I speak in 5 languages, so it's difficult to find the appropriate word in one of these 5 languages. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, I want to speak with you about this topic today, and this is this was my topic. If you have opinion how to help to cities of Uzbekistan, to cities, not just Samarkand, but Bukhara also, and Tashkent, yes, in Tashkent, because Tashkent have a wonderful socialist modernism legacy who unfortunately, as like a house of cinematography or Nauruz concert hall is demolished. Please pay your attention that in the last publications of the very famous newspapers as New York Times, Calvert Journal, and different more, the Tashkent Underground is the most visited, most recommended place to go. Not Kukeldash Madrasa, not like another what we see, what we think that this heritage of Samarkand. But for Uzbeks, when you say when you ask maybe for citizen of Tashkent, how do you think what is the spot to go to for tourists? He said Kukeldash Madrasa or like Hastimam, but tourists choose underground or Tashkent Underground or the Soviet era buildings, People's Friendship Palace, and so on. So every city of Uzbekistan need to save its originality. Tashkent is Soviet modernist art. Samarkand is a street stylist. It's Russian style, then Timurid style, and it's archaeological pre-Islamic style. Bukhara, it's wild style of architecture, early Islam, and the time of Bukhara Emirate. Khwarezm, it's Ichankala and Khwarezmian architecture. So if for today our listeners, I want to wish if they're students, they're young, and they're continuers of our society. So please save your cities, your originality, and everything will be in tourism is okay, and it will be sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nadir. It is very interesting, and I also share the pain in observing and watching how one by one all the cherished and valued old buildings are going and disappearing from the face of the cities. It is interesting how the perception of tourism development is different in the eyes of the leadership and as well as in the eyes of the residents. There is a big gap in how we perceive it. When the country fastly wants to develop, there are a lot of opinions that we need big buildings, skyscrapers, because we want to be like West. But on the other hand, we forget that the tourist seeks for a different experience, something that they don't encounter every day. And this genuinity, this authenticity, the simplicity that we carry throughout the years is a very important component of the destination attractiveness. And by losing it, we're losing all the opportunity and resources that currently we have. And it is sad to see in UNESCO World Heritage Sites, as Samarkand also losing the European part by building some buildings covered with plastic today, because there's no reason actually. Yes, because there's a lot of examples from close countries to us where they preserved the buildings, and that is what they have, and they're popular for. Look at Georgia, for example, the city of Tbilisi. How much it is attractive, beautiful, the way it is, and those streets, even the street arts, the graffitis today. There are certain itineraries where you would go and see how simple it is, how cute it is, and at the same time it shapes your experience in the place. I hope Tashkent won't be shaped as Ashgabat and won't become a ghost city, and that's not the future. We are very much hopeful as specialists in tourism. I hope we will prevent that somehow. And thank you for your insight, Nadir. I know that for watching your posts on how much you feel for Samarkand and preserving the Soviet history as well, renaming the street names, also the changes of a cupolas, all of it is painful for those who basically work in tourism field, and we would like to show how it was and how it is now, but not why we lost it, right? Yes. Thank you very much. Is there any questions? It can be questions among the speakers too.
We have one comment, well, one suggestion maybe in the chat from our viewers. They were asking Mr. Nadir to share the pictures because they couldn't see everything in detail, but I guess because of the connection issues, maybe we could ask you to share them afterwards and we can just show them to our viewers because they are really curious.
Yes.
And they would like to check on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I will share later to our chat to our
Yes.
chat, and I will share you.
Later on, dear viewers, you will be able to see with all the shared materials that were shared today on the website of MDIS Tashkent, the slides as well as the images, the visual aids will be available for you, as well as the recording of today's session. So yes, Aysa?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to Nadir. There are different ways, especially young people can discover different parts of the city that are getting more and more popular in St. Petersburg. And I don't know if you already have them in Samarkand, but if no, then try. So one thing is the apps. We have different apps with audio guides, which are absolutely free. I actually don't know who creates them. Sometimes these are museums, sometimes maybe just volunteers, but it uses your GPS and it shows you a simplified map where it draws the route. So as you follow the route, every time you reach a certain point, the audio starts playing in your earphones and you can listen to some comments on the route. And this is how you can discover the city by yourself. The same thing is created, but not through special apps, by private guides. Either these are printed routes that they distribute or sell for the price of a cup of coffee, but you get like a full route with descriptions, with comments. You can buy one route, but you can have your friends or a group of people, any travelers, going together, discovering this route. Or the most, I think, modern way I saw it is Telegram bot, that somehow also plays the audios as you walk. They sell it a little bit more expensive because it takes more time into developing it, but it still works. And it became very popular because of pandemic, as people don't want to travel in crowds, as people don't feel comfortable talking to each other and, sometimes accidentally sharing liquids. So people want to travel by themselves but still get this unique information and see unique places. So this is one of the ways how you can promote different, not so popular routes in the city.
Yes.
Thank you, Asya.
Yeah, thank you, Aysa. This is a good lead for our students, as well as at the university. We've recently launched a business incubator where lots of startups is going to take off. We hope, we're excited about it. And the ideas that you're sharing about Telegram bots and the apps that helps to develop a tourism promotion of the destinations and also adds to tourism experience is a very interesting idea and a suggestion that we could actually work on. Thank you. Anyone else would like to add or comment? Okay, if there is no questions.
Okay.
If there's no questions, there are no comments. Thank you very much for today's participation. I hope it was useful for you guys. I got a lot of information today as well, and it was very nice to see wonderful people in one place. And Denisa, do you have anything to add? You can jump in.
No, I also can just join your words and say that it was really amazing. It was really interesting and see so many insights from you guys who work in this. I guess it was fantastic for our students. I can see the positive comments in our YouTube streaming, in Facebook, and people are also amazed by this. So we really appreciate that you took your time because it's tough always. Thank you very much. Thank you. Just thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for organizers also. And I want to tell just for all the participants, for a small, my opinion, for their speeches. For John, you speak wonderful things. Reading the literature is the best way to promote everything, your culture, your person. And you said the good thing, if people read something just, and it's promote for tourism. I will show you just behind me, there is a book of Orhan Pamuk, Turkish writer, and I read his book, and I travel to Istanbul to see his place. So I want to say that this is very important. And for Amin, I want to say that Iran is also have a great potential, more than us, I think, great potential of tourism. And we hope that between our nations, for example, if in Uzbekistan, the Iranian travelers to see the Persian world can travel, and our Uzbek travelers to go to, because we have a connection historical, and even we have a big Iranian diaspora here. So very interesting. Thank you for organizers again. Gulnoza, my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So goodbye.
Goodbye. See you.